everyone, and thank you for joining us for this webinar today about how to de-risk your supply chain with SourceDay. I'm going to go over a few housekeeping items so you can follow along. First of all, if you would like to change the viewing experience, you can move some of the windows on your screen around to your preferences. And at the bottom of your console, you'll see the Q&A icon if you'd like to submit a question, which we will address at the end of the presentation. As a reminder, we will be sharing this on-demand recording with you all after the fact so that you can review it at your leisure. And one more thing, there are some supporting documents about SourceDay that you can download from the console, so please be sure to check those out. Here's the SourceDay team that's going to be presenting today. Some of you may have seen that our chief data scientist was going to join us, but he actually wound up having a baby. So instead, we have a special guest, our Chief Operating Officer, Michael Miller, and I just wanted to allow Michael and Connor to introduce themselves.
Hi, congratulations to Coleman and his wife. I'm happy to be filling in for him. My name is Michael Miller. I'm the Chief Operating Officer here. I've been here for a little over a year, and background is COO at sort of multiple supply chain SaaS companies.
Awesome. And my name is Connor Michon. I'm the product manager at SourceDay. I've been here for about 2.5 years now. My background is also in supply chain. I was actually a former buyer. So we like to say our product is for buyers, built by buyers. And after that, it was more on the data side, looking at inventory and channel spend. So very happy to talk about purchase order collab with y'all today.
Thanks, guys. And I am Allison Durbin. I'm the Director of Growth Marketing here at SourceDay, and I will be your moderator. So first, I'd like to invite you to participate in a poll. The question here is, how optimistic are you about AI's impact on the supply chain? You can go ahead and click.
This one is...
Go ahead.
Yeah, no, I think this is an interesting question, and glad we're asking it in the context of risk management. I'm sure all of you listening in have heard about AI's impact on supply chain. And we've heard from our customers, from prospects, that there's a lot of different takes on how it can impact. So really excited to hear about if y'all are positive, looking forward to impact, skeptical. And after this call and talking with our team, we'd love to hear about potentially why you're skeptical, why you're excited, as this is a really impactful area.
Looks like there's some folks voting. So just want to show you so far what people have been saying. Looks like there's pretty even spread in the optimism department, so we're glad to hear that. We'll be talking a little bit more about this in the presentation, but we have one more question for you. Where do you see the most risk in your supply chain?
Yep, this is another one that I think is equally as important.
Yes, we will be addressing all of this.
Yep. So we'll be talking a lot today about the different types of risk that we see in supply chain. So interested in hearing about what y'all see as the key areas of risk. Supply chain risk can typically be a very generic concept. So we really want to dig into the nitty-gritty about where SourceDay views a lot of potential risk and how our product can help solve a lot of that risk.
All right, and you can see some of the results here. So we'll be addressing each of these as we move on. And with that, I would like to turn it over to Michael again.
Hi, thanks. Before we get to all the good stuff, I thought I would just take a minute or two and set the stage a little bit. Probably not the people on this webinar, but for a lot of people out there, the first time they ever heard of supply chain risk, supply chain disruption, supply chain volatility was when the pandemic turned everything on its head a few years ago. And while that's starting to feel like a pretty long time ago, not a week goes by where a major manufacturer is not citing publicly supply chain risks and supply chain disruptions as a drag on their business, drag on their earnings, whatever. And that could be UPS, that could be Airbus, that could be Rivian, that could even be Apple. So risk is still all around us, and particularly in the part of the network that we're focused on, which is inbound supply from your suppliers. So of course, they're the known risks, right? And that is where your suppliers are challenged to meet their commitment around cost, quantity, or delivery date. We know that POs, about half of POs change, and when they do change, they change almost 2.5 times. So there's a lot of volatility just there. And of course, we focus on that. But what about the risks that you can't see and the risks that you can't mitigate and you can't control? For example, what about the static lead time that's in your ERP that there's no chance is going to be met? What about a supplier that isn't acknowledging in the way that they typically do because they're out of the office or some such? What about the PO that never even gets delivered because there's been turnover at your supplier and your vendor table contact info is out of date? So this is what SourceDay is focused on, is really helping you see things that you couldn't otherwise see that are going to cause risk for your business. So very quickly, let me distinguish between the what we do and the why we do it. In terms of the what, one of my favorite quotes is from the head of operations at one of our largest customers. And he said, "Don't show me the green, show me the red." And what that means is, help me focus my team's precious time, precious resources on the issues that matter most and are going to create the most impact in the business. Of course, being able to focus on the exceptions, the risks, makes the teams much more efficient. In fact, we hear consistently from our customers that they spend up to 80% less time managing POs when they have SourceDay. But we all know, everyone knows on this call, that an efficiency story is no longer sufficient. So let's talk about the why. And the why for us, the hero metric that we point everything towards, is on-time delivery and improving on-time delivery. Our customers tell us that they're seeing up to 96% on-time delivery from their supplier network through using SourceDay. Why does this matter? This matters so much because when you get what you're expecting, when you expect it, your entire business runs better. I saw in the survey there just a second ago that there's a concern about carrying cost, inventory carrying cost. We just published a case study in the last 2 weeks. One of our customers, Brawnability, says that they were able to reduce their on-hand inventory, their buffer stock, by 22% because they had so much confidence and predictability in the inbound supply through SourceDay. What does on-time delivery mean for your revenue? It means that you can ship and recognize revenue because your lines are up and running without expensive downtime, overtime, or expedites. So when you orient on-time delivery and predictability, your entire operation is going to run more smoothly. So for us, the why is about improving the outcomes for your business. And we're going to talk about today, that is the exact approach that we've taken with regards to AI in the product. I'm surprised to see less skepticism, frankly. There's so much buzz, there's so much confusion about AI in the market. Generally speaking, what that means is somebody's incorporated ChatGPT into their platform. We're taking a different approach. We have a really broad data set with 60 billion in spend and 97,000 suppliers in our network. And what that means is we know what good looks like. We can pattern match, so we know when something is off the happy path, whether it be supplier behavior, supplier contact, PO delivery, lead time risk, et cetera. So we've taken a very practical approach to surfacing in very specific workflows, very specific ways, when there is a risk, helping recommend an action so that you can drive resolution. Again, for us, it is all about outcomes. And that is really what we're talking about in this big release that we've announced this week. It's a huge step forward for us in terms of helping you manage risk in your inbound supply chain. And I'm going to shut up now and let Connor show you all the good stuff.
Awesome. Appreciate that, Michael. So like Michael had mentioned, we're going to be talking through a lot about what this risk is that SourceDay is kind of hanging our hats on. And we're also going to talk about how you can prevent that risk and be more proactive when managing that risk with SourceDay. And finally, at the end, we'll open it up to questions and answers. So if you have questions, feel free to add them to the chat. And at the end, we'll go through those. So without further ado, I'm going to jump into our slides. All right. So procurement has always been viewed as a back of the house or quote unquote secondary function. In support of the areas of the business that leadership is viewed as being a source of competitive advantage. Well, at SourceDay, we know better. Having worked as a buyer myself, I can assure you that procurement is, in fact, mission critical to the business. And when done well, procurement can actually be that source of competitive advantage within the firm. And by driving this best-in-class on-time delivery of those direct materials that you need to be able to build products for your customers, procurement teams have a tangible impact on the business. We can ensure that the company is not incurring inventory before needed. So we're able to directly impact the cash flow by making sure that you're only spending when you need to spend. Procurement teams can also ensure that production lines run smooth and that orders to their own customers are always being met to help protect that revenue. So as we talk about procurement as a center that has a key stake in both reducing those carrying costs and protecting that revenue, we like to think of the modern procurement team as elevated to the role of a primary activity within the firm's value chain. So we're a risk management company that does so by managing purchase orders. And we'll talk a little bit about the risk as we define it. In talking with a lot of our customers, we hear about a lot of sources of risk that they're really worried about in this post-COVID world. One of the big ones is production stoppages. We like to think of this as the case of the really missing critical part. If you're missing a critical part that you need in order to build a product for your own suppliers or for your own customers, and you're missing that part because you don't know where it is from your own supplier base, you run the risk of having your production lines be stopped, production lines be delayed, and think about the cost of having those production lines down. For most businesses, that number can run into the millions. We also talk about delays of orders to your own customer base. Think of that as that missing critical part and how that impacts the NPS or the positive sentiment that you're getting from your own customer. If you're delivering late consistently, that's an impact to your own business and potentially to your revenue. And this next one is really important. We've touched on it a little bit, but buffer stock. In the post-COVID world, after we saw the effects of bullwhip effect, where all of a sudden information asymmetry throughout the supply chain was causing companies to see those downstream impacts, a lot of companies ended up upping their buffer stock, i.e. holding more inventory in order to hedge their bets against risk. And the impact of that now is that those inventory holding costs are just sitting on the books. And we can think of that, and I want you all to hopefully think about how much inventory you're holding within your own supply chain and what you could do if you all of a sudden reduce that number. We also think of risks in terms of revenue reduction due to customers having to pay extra costs in expediting orders to their suppliers, losing customers because they've delayed an order, and other types of disruptions. With SourceDay, we've seen tangible evidence that our customers are seeing better results in their supply chain using our product. The big one that I want to point everybody to is the metric that Michael alluded to earlier, which is that up to 90%, 96% on-time delivery metric. And at SourceDay, this metric is the one that we call everybody's attention to because we know just how important on-time delivery is to the business. If you're able to have full confidence that your parts are going to arrive not early and not late, you're able to reduce inventory. You're also able to improve and protect that revenue to your own customers. And the metric right to the right, that 22% reduction in buffer stock, is a huge thing to call out. So think about your own balance sheet, how much inventory has been sitting on the books the last quarter, the last year, and think about what your team could do if all of a sudden you could reduce those costs by 22%. So we're going to jump into what the challenge is. So I'll first start by defining the problem that we're trying to solve. We've learned from our customers that PO collaboration, as it exists today, is often a manual and repetitive process. And this creates blind spots in the business. And those blind spots are a significant risk. This leads to buyers, the individual teams that are managing these purchase orders, spending time on low impact and repetitive tasks rather than focusing on strategic challenges that could tangibly impact your business. And this manual intervention creates a lot of operational risk. And what SourceDay does is we sit between your ERP and your suppliers as the hardworking middleman. We take those new POs that are cut and we guarantee that 100% of those purchase orders are delivered to your suppliers. We also record supplier acknowledgements, supplier changes, and allow for collaboration on those orders so that both parties have visibility into what is being ordered and when those orders are coming in. We talked to a lot of our customers that were formerly using more traditional means of sending orders and communicating with suppliers, whether that be emails, whether that be spreadsheets, whether that be phone calls. And more than anything, we hear from these customers the same sentiment. Procurement is slow, procurement is repetitive, procurement is non-strategic. We also hear that simple screw-ups, such as an outdated email address here or a miscommunication regarding an order there, are really killing their supply chain. And SourceDay was built to solve both of these problems. By having visibility into all of your orders all of the time, SourceDay allows organizations to be able to view their purchasing from a more strategic vantage point and make decisions that can significantly impact the spend of their organization. And by automating some of the simple stuff, such as that PO delivery and PO change management, SourceDay can help ensure that those painful misses never occur. So what we're going to do now is we're going to jump through a quick little demo of our product and the potential benefits that y'all can receive by implementing SourceDay. So I'm going to start here on the all risk view. And this is the default view within the purchase order hub that shows all of the changes and issues relating to your purchase orders that may impact on-time delivery. As we alluded to earlier, on-time delivery is the hero metric, as we call it, and it's really the place where we want our customers to focus on improvements. So if you have visibility into any potential risk to the on-time delivery, we think that's an immediate benefit to you as you're able to take action and prioritize those risks within your procurement teams. And we allow your team to actually dig deeper into those individual risks. So you're able to focus in on the types of risks that matter to you. We see some changes from the supplier, email issues, as we talked about earlier, when we're able to provide visibility into orders that were not delivered. And we're also able to see some issues related to predictive risks, i.e. those that we're able to predict before the issue even occurs and impacts your business. And using the same filter framework, we're able to layer in additional filters that matter to your business. And at SourceDay, we like to think of this as a simple framework that allows you to be able to build the business rules that you know best. So if you know that certain suppliers have more potential risk, or you want to have bigger eyes and visibility on, we allow your team to be able to layer in different filter sets and build rules around that. So imagine this is creating different types of views and filter sets that you want to have your team return to and manage day to day. We also allow your team to be able to save these different views and filter sets so that they can return to them later. An important idea here is the idea of returning to the same sort of tasks your team is doing day to day. Instead of spending time trying to figure out what's wrong and what I should spend my time in, I can use my business rules to build different types of views based on filter criteria, and then return to those views each day. Next, I want to jump through some of the different types of risk that we're providing visibility to within our application. And the first one is this idea of a proposed change from the supplier. So as we talked about earlier, we're defining risk as any sort of issue that may impact a purchase order's on-time delivery. In the example here, we can see that the supplier is proposing that a purchase order line is pushed out, that they're actually going to deliver this part later. And while this may seem like a simple change to the purchase order, when you're able to have the visibility in SourceDay into what these changes are and how they impact the different orders, you're able to understand how this might impact your business. If you know that that critical part is involved in a sales order that you need to meet by a specific deadline, you're able to take more strategic action on that. You're able to message the supplier and work out a expediting fee. You're able to make sure that you can source with a different supplier if need be. We allow you to have that view of all the different orders that could be impacting your business, so you have that full visibility into inbound supply. The next risk that we're going to talk about is lead time risk. And what this is it is a prediction using SourceDay's dataset of issues before they occur. We know that in the ERP, there are lead times that have not been updated since you've onboarded your vendors. And that could be 10 years. We've even heard from customers that was 15, 20 years ago, and they've never, ever updated those lead times. And what that means is that every time that your MRP is running and cutting purchase orders, it's doing so with a false sense of when orders should be arriving. What SourceDay does is we look at the due date of the purchase order at exactly the time that the PO is cut, and we're able to analyze it and say, based on this item's history with this supplier, we do not think this is realistic lead time. We do not think that this order can be met by the deadline. We're able to flag those issues before they actually become issues for your business so that you can go ahead and take actions. So in the example here, I've seen the risk, and I'm now prompted by SourceDay to actually send a message asking my supplier to confirm the order. So I'll pause right there and take a step back. We've now flagged the issue before it's an issue, and we've given you simple resolutions to confirm the order and make sure that you receive that part in time. Now, that's a huge benefit for your business as you're able to move from reactive management of PO risk to now proactive management. You're able to identify these issues earlier and solve for them in real time. The next risk is one that our customers are often talking about as a mundane risk that causes huge problems. And that's the idea of an email not being delivered. Think about that really important purchase order that you're sending out to your supplier, and all of a sudden the deadline passes and you're wondering, where is that order? One of the big issues that we've heard is that this is caused by the email never being delivered. And this is such a simple problem that even the most strategic of organizations are facing every day. We know from our data that an average of 1.7% of emails to suppliers are bouncing, i.e. never being delivered to the supplier. And at over 1 million lines per quarter, whatever that may be for your business, this adds up very, very, very quickly. So if you're relying on your ERP alone to deliver those purchase orders to your suppliers, that leaves you with massive blind spots that you don't even know about until the order doesn't show up. SourceDay allows you to have visibility into that. We're able to flag those orders when they don't deliver and tell you information about why it didn't deliver. We're even able to go as granular as saying that this purchase order was delivered to your supplier, but we received an out of office notification from the supplier. You should probably add an additional contact and make sure that you can have secondaries to receive the order and acknowledge that they're actually going to fulfill that order on time. And SourceDay allows you to do so. You can manage all of these contacts in one place so that you can assure that someone is always receiving your order and able to actually fulfill that order. So when you're thinking about how could this actually impact my own business, I would hope that you can think about how many lines am I ordering every quarter? And let's take that and let's multiply it by the average that SourceDay is seeing of 1.7% of those orders actually bouncing. And think about how that could actually impact your business. That's a lot of orders. That's a lot of potential misses. That's additional costs being incurred. SourceDay allows you to have visibility earlier on in the PO lifecycle process so you can solve those problems. The next thing that we'll talk quickly on is automation. And this is one thing that we are incredibly excited about as a business and really working on making impactful for our customers. And it's the idea of actually being able to build the same sort of rules and criteria based on your own business logic into automation rules. We hear a lot from our customers that buyer teams are left managing spend that at the end of the day doesn't really matter. You have buyer teams that are going in, reviewing orders where a supplier may have proposed a cent increase on an order, or maybe pushing the due date back a day when it doesn't really matter because it's not a critical part. And we want to make sure that buyers are left doing strategic work and not this repetitive work. So you can imagine a case where we're able to layer in these same business rules that we've just talked about prioritizing, and we're able to build automation rules for building outcomes. So I could say that I know that any orders from this strategic supplier that are within 7 days, I'm going to trust that they're going to be able to get those in a way that matters to my business. So I want to automatically accept those changes to my purchase orders. I could do the same for rejecting any changes. I could do the same for counter proposing with a message to my supplier informing them why I've counterproposed and what I would like as the outcome. So by building in these business rules and this logic, your team is able to have the entire visibility of what your supply chain's logic is. And anecdotally, I'll just talk that this is a huge benefit for buyer teams, because every time you add in a single buyer, you're able to think of, that's a lot of institutional knowledge that this buyer just has kept in their own brain. If I were able to actually map out all of the supply chain logic and put it in one place, that allows my team to be more strategic in making sure that those logic points are aligned throughout our business and that we can manage them in all one place. And next, we're going to talk about SourceDay Intelligence. So that was just a quick product demo of what our product does. And a lot of the information that we just went over is relating to our machine learning and AI platform that we call SourceDay Intelligence. And so you'll see a lot about it on our website and in marketing claims, because it is a very core and critical part of our business. And I want to make sure we have full visibility into what this really means. So SourceDay Intelligence is our next evolution of our SourceDay risk management. And what it is it is a machine learning platform that is engineered to improve supply chain performance by predicting unforeseen inbound supply risks, recommending effective resolutions, and automating PO lifecycle workflows. So our patent pending advanced data models learn from our largest and constantly growing data set of PO lifecycle events and POs and customers. And we're able to do pattern matching to look at global patterns, detect unforeseen risks, and calculate potential impact before disruption even occurs. And so think about this. If you're able to make faster, smarter, more proactive decisions based on real-time insights and preempt risks before they even occur, you're able to significantly impact your supply chain. And with SourceDay Intelligence, you can head off the up to 70% of inbound supply issues that we've seen occur prior to shipment. So that's a lot of events that are occurring before the supplier even ships the order. And SourceDay Intelligence allows you to be more strategic and more proactive when managing these types of events. And so risk is popping up throughout the PO lifecycle. And based on our data set, we've seen that over 52% of purchase orders require manual intervention. And a lot of these purchase orders, that intervention is more than once, more than twice. And with this volume of change, it's very difficult for traditional buyers using traditional systems to be able to view all of these risks, take action on all of these risks, and make sure that the business is optimized in a way that makes sense. Teams are left diverting their time and focusing on non-strategic and more tactical, repetitive tasks, as we keep saying, rather than strategic tasks. So what SourceDay does is we combine our expertise in PO lifecycle management, over a decade of it, with our huge data set of spend. And what that means is that we have over $59 billion in direct material spend that's going through our system. And we're able to use this to be able to make smarter decisions for you. And I really want to call out our data set, because I think it's the linchpin of our entire SourceDay Intelligence claim. And it's the idea that we have a huge data set, but we also have a data set that makes more sense for the types of decisions that our customers are making. So we'll start with the scale. We have over 97,000 suppliers and over $59 billion in spend that we manage. This is a really deep, really detailed, and significantly impactful data set that allows for pattern matching. But ERPs also have a good amount of data. So what sets SourceDay apart from those ERPs and other systems? And it's that we don't just know what the purchase order is, but we also know what steps the purchase order took to get to different outcomes. So we have over 100 million purchase order updates that are being processed every year. That could be new orders going out. That could be changes coming in from supplier side, from the buyer side, approvals, rejections, counter proposals. We have all sorts of events that are coming in. We also have over 75 million messages to and from suppliers on those purchase orders. So what that allows us to do is to be able to look at patterns and understand what purchase order lifecycle is good, and more importantly, what purchase order lifecycle is bad. And the problem of risk, it has a high impact on your bottom line. As we talked about earlier, missed orders cause lost revenue, customer delivery delays, increased carrying costs, and increased buffer stock. And we can even have production stoppages. Avoiding these risks is absolutely critical to the modern supply chain. And it's really hard to measure what's driving this risk. At SourceDay, we have a unique view into what drives better outcomes for procurement teams because we manage that entire purchase order lifecycle. And I'll start by talking about one of our favorite quotes, which is, your ERP knows whether a PO was delivered on time, but only SourceDay knows why it was delivered on time. And this is because we have that unique data set that allows us to know what good looks like in PO life cycles and what bad looks like. So for example, we know that when a purchase order is acknowledged in SourceDay, that it is over 24% more likely to be delivered on time. And so that means we also know the inverse. We know that when a purchase order has not been acknowledged by your suppliers, that it is at a much, much, much higher chance of being late. And so in these final slides, we'll just revisit the scope of risk management problem. So as we talked about earlier, PO collaboration is often manual and reactive, and this creates blind spots and risk for your business. This results in the majority of those purchase orders requiring manual intervention from your teams. And from our SourceDay numbers, we're able to say that that's over 52% of purchase orders. Buyers are left spending a lot of their time on this low impact repetitive issues instead of on strategic challenges. We know that manual intervention creates a lot of operational risk, and we can quantify this challenge using real PO data to see the full cost of risk management on POs today. From just two common reasons, POs failing to deliver on time, and the second one being suppliers changing POs, we see that more than half of all orders require this manual intervention. And we see that for most of these orders that do require manual intervention, they require multiple interventions. That could be a change here, a counter proposal, a change on another order because of a change on a different order. All sorts of changes are occurring in our system. And the end result is very manual, very reactive, very scattered process that requires manual touch from your business. And this is a huge administrative burden. And it can also draw those buyers away from doing the more impactful work, planning ahead, working on strong relationships with your suppliers, making sure that you have sourcing from other areas, other regions. And we want to make sure that the teams that we are working with are focused on these strategic outcomes. And so we can talk about what happens when we layer in SourceDay and SourceDay intelligence. When we're able to actually automate a lot of these resolutions, the vast majority of these risks are automatically handled. And what that means is that your teams can focus on these higher impact issues and more proactive risk avoidance. And this focus that SourceDay has on risk management also reduces the number of missed orders. And this leaves fewer required tasks and interventions from your buyer teams. So on our final slide, I'll just touch on a few of the issues that we brought up today and the way that SourceDay can help manage it. So today we went over 4 very impactful types of risk that SourceDay is able to layer into the UI. We have more risks, and we're very excited to keep building on different ways to manage risk. But we'll just start by covering these 4 again. Lead time risk. I want you to pause and think about how often you're updating those lead times in your ERP. If you're not doing them constantly, or you don't have data sets that are constantly looking to see when these should be updated, that's a huge risk for your business. And it means that you're potentially cutting orders that are bound for failure in the first place. With SourceDay, you're able to flag those issues earlier, manage them, and actually go ahead and solve the root cause. Go back and fix them in your ERP using the data set that we have. We have proposed changes that are coming from your supplier. Instead of realizing that a supplier has proposed a change too late in the process, we're able to make sure that your buyers have visibility immediately to any proposed changes, so you can adjust your inbound supply plans based on those changes. Missing acknowledgement. What SourceDay does is we're able to understand when a supplier has not acknowledged in a timely manner based on their previous and historical performance. If we see that a supplier as typically acknowledges purchase orders within 4 days, and all of a sudden it's been a week, we're able to flag that earlier in the process, because guess what? That order might have been missed by their team, or it might just need a little nudge. SourceDay allows you to do so that your team and your suppliers have full visibility into those orders. And finally, email issues. What may seem like a very mundane issue causes problems and wreaks havoc across our customers' supply chains. SourceDay is able to help you make sure that all orders, 100% of them, are delivered to your suppliers, and to make sure that you have visibility and correct issues before they even occur. So with that, I'll open it up to questions. Feel free to add them in the chat, and we'll be happy to talk about it.
Thanks, Connor. I'm actually going to take one that's in the chat, and it's about how suppliers use SourceDay. This is a really important point. Historically, the failure of whether you call it a vendor portal or supplier kind of other network platforms has been that suppliers don't engage. And if the suppliers don't engage, the value you're going to get from any kind of tool or platform is going to be limited. And we think we've cracked the code on this really across two vectors. One is supplier optionality. Some get a lot of value from interacting with the portal. Some want to continue to live in EDI. Some infrequent long-tail suppliers want to live in email workflows, which is perfectly fine. We give them tools like the ability to bulk upload shipment data, changes, et cetera. So really providing suppliers a way, a varied set of ways in which to operate. And the other is, we actually have, I'm sure most of you have heard of customer success teams. We actually have a supplier success team. So thinking about, the day in the life, the user experience, how to communicate, how to create value, how to recognize suppliers has been a really big part of how we drive value and drive engagement on that side of the network. It's a good question.
Thanks for grabbing that, Michael. And we do have a couple more in the queue. By the way, thank you everyone for sticking around. I know we're a little bit over time, but just want to make sure that we do address the questions that everyone has submitted. So there's another one here about, I hear a lot about risk management in terms of my N-tier suppliers, geopolitical risk, conflict risk, et cetera. How is this different? Connor, do you want to take that one?
Yeah. And this is a good question that comes up from customers all the time. And it's a somewhat funny answer, which is that while geopolitical or big supply chain global disruptions, for example, Suez Canal or an earthquake that's happening in a region might make the news more often, a lot of supply chain disruptions are caused by more everyday and more mundane issues. Things like emails not being delivered because the contact was not updated in the ERP, or a purchase order being cut with a lead time that is completely unrealistic, or a supplier just missing an update. In SourceDay, what we do is really focus in on these mundane issues, and we're able to automate and solve for them to make sure that your team has a guarantee that 100% of those updates are viewed by both parties, are enacted on by both parties, and have visibility into the entire order lifecycle. So while those issues might make the news, SourceDay is able to help you focus on solving the real issues that pose risk day to day to make your supply chain be able to focus and spend more time strategically thinking about those bigger solutions and bigger problems such as geopolitical risk and bigger supply chain global disruptions.
Excellent. And here's another really great question. Does the role or responsibilities of my procurement team change with SourceDay?
It absolutely does. And what we've seen from our customer base is that their procurement team is able to be focused more on those strategic questions. So the role of the buyer or the planner goes from tactical, working on very mundane tasks, to all of a sudden more strategic, solving bigger problems for the business. What we've heard from our customers is that we've been able to improve buyer efficiency by up to 80%. So, think for your business, what you could do if your buyers were 80% more efficient. What could you do with all that extra time savings? And what could you do with those buyers to make sure your business is acting more strategically? having that visibility on spend in all one place is a huge value add for the business. You're able to do more to protect your costs and protect your revenue. So we really think that the role of the buyer is more strategic as they're able to aid the business in more of a competitive advantage.
Great. And it looks like we have just one more question. How can suppliers use SourceDay? Do they have options? It's a little bit of a follow-up to Michael.
Yeah, I think Michael solved that question earlier, but we really provide supplier optionality. What that means is just different means of the suppliers interacting with SourceDay. So supplier can still live in email, they can live in a portal, they can live in EDI, whatever works best for them. SourceDay doesn't really care as long as we make sure that they're viewing order updates, acknowledging order updates, and proposing changes. And we think we've really solved that problem.
Great, thank you. I'm not seeing any other questions in the queue at this time. If you did have a last minute one, you can fill it in right now. But otherwise, thank you for joining us. I hope you're as excited as we are to see all these advanced capabilities in the SourceDay platform. And if you would, please fill out the survey that's in the console here. That'd be great so that we know how to better present information to you in the future. Thank you all for joining us.